Hello horror hounds, welcome back to my A to Z of horror. We're at N already, with a film that was released in 1971, the same year as Dario Argento's Cat o' Nine Tails, and is yet another example of why I love Italian horror cinema, and specifically the giallo subgenre. It's also an example of how eager Italian filmmakers were to jump on any successful bandwagon and have a go at pretty much anything. Directed by Emilio Miraglia, who tried his hand at only 2 giallo movies. N is for the night Evelyn came out of the grave. This is the moment where I tip the metaphorical hat to Jambo Shango and Randy Mole for their A to Z of horror, inspiring my own here, and where I'll tell you that I will leave in the description field below a link to their entry for N, the amazing Near Dark, and as a Brucey bonus I'm going to leave a link to my review of Near Dark from ages ago when I did a short mini run of reviews for 80s vampire movies. But for now we're going to be talking about the night Evelyn came out of the grave, another example of Italians gifting us from this period with lurid, overly long, wonderful movie titles. Let's get this out of the way straight at the top. The Night Evelyn Came Out of the Grave is not a scary horror movie. But if you love the subgenre of giallo movies, you'll probably have a lot of affection for this. Perhaps in the same way that Hammer fans understand that there are a number of really genuinely good Hammer horror movies and a load of campier, silly ones that they love sort of all the more for it. This would fall into that kind of category. I don't really want to give any kind of synopsis too much for the film because it's kind of a wild and crazy story once you get to the end credits. But there's an English lord who's anguished to the point of mania by the death of his red-headed wife Evelyn, and also by the perhaps false memory of her infidelity. Now he develops a real thing for redheads and picks up a string of them and invites them to his castle and then to his dungeon. Then he decides to get married for a second time, and here there are shades of Rebecca, where his new wife becomes as haunted with a prominent portrait of Evelyn as he has been, and there's a suspicion that maybe Evelyn never died and is trying to drive him mad, or did die and is exacting a revenge from beyond the grave. Plus there's a pack of foxes. Seriously. In style, this movie is sort of a Janus affair, looking forwards and backwards simultaneously. There's definitely a drive to try and emulate the explosive success of Argento's early gialli, but there's also large helpings of the gothic: castles, torture dungeons, seances, ghosts, throwing back to Mario Bava and the aforementioned Hammer horror movies. There are parts of the movie that are militantly modern, and it wants to tell you that it's set in the groovy, swinging, modern day England. The film's final act sees a sudden shift in venue to an ultra-modern villa outfitted with sort of prism metal blinds and stark white furnishings that wouldn't look out of place in Argento's Tenebrae. But there are whole other sections of the movie which seem like the story has slipped in time and without much tweaking could really be a quasi-medieval period gothic movie. While I was watching it, I felt that it's as if Roger Cameron, during the middle of his Poe cycle, had decided to make an Austin Powers movie. Now, make of that what you will. That's the kind of hook that would make me want to watch a film. So it's kind of goofy, it's not really scary, but there are some points to underline thickly. And topmost of those is that it looks absolutely gorgeous. As an awful lot of Italian horror cinema did from this period, I just found my eyes drinking up every frame. I mean, seriously, the Arrow release can only but help. But the film looks beautiful. Secondly, if you do choose to watch it, know up front that the entire thing is supposed to be taking place in England. It's something I twigged onto very, very late in the film because clearly everyone's Italian and all the settings are clearly Italian. So when he talks about popping off to London, I honestly thought he was getting on a plane and going to London and coming back to Italy. No, this is supposed to be set in an English country mansion. The other thing I've noticed is the plethora of twists at the end, coming so thick and fast, one on top of another. That's, I just laughed. I think it's absolutely hilarious. It's given some of the revelations and the sheer number of them, one after another. I suspect this will be a great little movie to watch a second time, knowing how all the cards fall. Don't take that to mean that everything's wrapped up neatly in the end, like an early M. Night Shyamalan movie, Signs or The Sixth Sense, because it's not. Plot points, and I mean things that seem to be really important plot points, are introduced and just left strewn like confetti in the wake of a narrative that doesn't really care much about making sense, but only cares about making an impression. As a giallo movie, I wouldn't say it was one of the key films to watch. It's certainly on the fringes, an outlier of the subgenre, and whilst I enjoyed it immensely, as I generally enjoy the Italian cinematic tradition of this era of turning a buck and not giving a fuck, I'm also eternally grateful that the subgenre I love the most did have some stable hands at the tiller. So for every Mario Bava, Dario Argento, Pupi Avati making solid, core, vital giallo movies, we can have half a dozen other bandwagon jumpers going on their bonkers cinematic wig outs. It's quite clear that the American distributors didn't know what to do with this movie. They created this lurid poster for it, which don't expect this or anything like this to happen in the movie ever. They also presented the movie with some gimmicky blood corn, red dyed popcorn. When you're bringing out gimmicks like this, you're not sure what you've got on your hands or how to market it. And maybe you won't know what to make of it either. But I can tell you this. If you've got a thing for redheads, by which I mean basically if you're not insane, then you can rest assured, if this is any kind of selling point for you, that every single redhead you see in this movie will eventually, and sometimes sooner rather than later, be showing you their breasts. Emilio Miraglia only made one other giallo movie, The Red Queen Kills 7 Times. I've already ordered it. So we'll be moving in very short order to O, and a film that if it scares you, you can't go running to your parents about, because O is for